All right. Welcome, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to Sparkling Inquiry, and our presenter tonight is Tina Zita. She is an experienced OTF presenter. She comes to us from Peel. There's been great interest in inquiry these past couple of years, and I know you're all as excited as I am to hear her presentation. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tina, and have a great session.
Thanks, Trish. It's great to see a lot of Peel folks in the conversation tonight. I'm super excited to talk about sparking inquiry with digital provocations. It's been something we've been exploring for the last few years, and love to hear your feedback and your ideas, and that we all get to learn from each other. So just a little bit about me. My name's Tina Zita, and I'm a modern learning resource teacher with Peel. I used to be an instructional technology resource teacher with Peel, and that kind of means I have the coolest job out there. So my job is to help teachers from kindergarten to grade 12 at about 40 different schools integrate technology into their program and innovate in different ways. So that can be doing mystery Skypes with the classroom, to hanging out and planning with a high school teacher today, or looking ahead and trying to problem solve and try something different. Feel free to connect with me. I know a few people already did right now on Twitter and all of those different formats, but we'll share that again at the end of our night as well. Monica, did you have a question? You can type it into the chat box right on the side if you want. So tonight, when we're looking at the inquiry process, I know there's so many different inquiry formats and models out there that sometimes it can be a little overwhelming. So for me, I always go back. Hi, Monica, I'm sorry. So when we look at inquiry, I always go back to the student inquiry monograph that the ministry put out a few years back, because I think it really brought us back down to those 4 essential elements, the idea of focusing in on how, helping students focus in on that inquiry, how they can formulate a question, how we can get them engaged in a topic, then that exploration where they investigate their questions, that analysis as they summarize and synthesize, and then that sharing piece as they communicate their inquiry. And I found for me, when I was struggling with it, whether I'm working with adults or with kids, it's how do we get them to ask those questions that we want them to kind of explore? How do we link those inquiries that our learners have with those big ideas that we find in the curriculum? And that's where, for me, I was really looking at those invitations and those provocations, and how do we really spark an inquiry in something like, say, early societies, as that explores. Yeah. Sorry, thought somebody was jumping in. That's okay. So for us tonight, we're really going to focus in on that focus stage. How can we get kids to ask questions around topics that we're kind of exploring? And hopefully everybody can hear. Maybe we'll do the whole little, do you want to put an emoji up just to let us know that you can hear us? We're all good? Everybody can hear. Okay, we're going. Awesome. All right, well, we'll keep going, and hopefully you just let us know if there's any issues there, and I'll leave it up to Trish to jump in if she thinks there's a suggestion we should make. All right, so really tonight is all about getting kids to ask those questions. And for me, what's most exciting about that is really how much that fosters that 21st century learner that we want. And I always go back to a clip that I heard from John Seeley Brown in a video for 21st century learning called Rethinking 21st Century Learning. And he has a line that stuck to me called The Catch for Preparing Students for the 21st Century Workforce, is how do you get kids who have curiosity disposition? And that's the exciting piece, when we can see those models of learning coming together with student passions, coming together with that, those skills that we want to foster in our learners. So that is hopefully what we'll bring to our discussions tonight. We're going to look in particular about how we can use images and where we can find some of those images, looking at video, and I'd love to hear your ideas because video is one of those ones we can have an unlimited list of resources. And we're going to tap on VR and AR. We're going to see where it goes tonight and how much the technology collaborates with us. But just as we get started, we want to get to know you guys a little better. So if you have a minute or two and want to the chat window, then we can see who's in the room, all 41 of us. So hi there, Karen from Peel in Brampton. Love that you're coming to us from that full-day kindergarten. We have some other full-day kindergarten folks. I see some more Peel and TDSB. Upper Grand, grade 5, 6. Hey, Monica, nice to see you. Eli, what is a Performance Plus teacher? That sounds pretty cool. Nice to see you, Karen. Some more Peel folks in Hamilton Wentworth. That's awesome. Cressida, is that Ottawa Catholic? OCSB? Awesome. Thanks for joining us. Lainey, where's Blue Water? Is that in the north? I should know. That's terrible. So it seems like we have a wide variety of folks, all the way from kindergarten up to grade 5 and 6, which is awesome. And tonight we're going to try to cater some of the resources and some of the examples we show to topics you're exploring. So hopefully we'll be able to match them up really nicely so everybody can leave with something they can try soon. Simcoe County. All right. Owen Sound. Thank you, Lainey. So Peel, awesome. Thank you, guys. I know it's a busy time of year with reporting and all that jazz. So thank you for taking the time tonight to join this conversation. Cheryl, I believe so. It's they'll be part of the recording, but you can always connect with me and we can give you a digital copy as well that you can change up and remix how you like. So my email will be on the last page. Definitely no such thing as being late. That's been my whole day. It's been a nice traffic kind of day, right? So we'll take one more minute if anybody wants to introduce themselves. And we'll just say one more time, as we go through on the next few pages, we want to get to know the group a little bit more in that our makeup, as well as some of the topics you're exploring right now, so that we can cater some of the resources to what you're looking and working on. Monica, I don't know if there's a dedicated hashtag, but I know the handle is at OTF_PD if you want to take them in your tweets. Okay, so thank you guys. You can keep dropping your introductions in if you like, but we're going to go on to the next question. So just like you were doing earlier with the clip art, if you can just put a clip art symbol for the area that most represents you, that would be great. I like the bridge. That's awesome. There we go. All right, so we have a bunch of primary, some junior, some mixed, and a few folks in intermediate. Gurpreet, no worries if you just drop it into our chat like you did, you're ahead of the game. That's awesome. So if you don't have access to the clip art because you're on your phones or tablets, just drop it into the chat. That's great. All right, so lots of primary folks. So we'll make sure to focus in on that piece a little bit. Some junior, awesome, and some mixed. So we'll explore that way. Fantastic. All right, folks, we're going to go to our next question, if that's okay. So I'd love to just know some of the ways that you get kids to ask questions now. So what are some of the ways that you engage them in inquiry, that you really get to that focus stage, that you get them thinking and asking questions and sparking that curiosity? So for this one, we're just going to add a text box on the toolbar, and I'm just going to see if I can do this here. You should see this little box here. We'll let you add a text box on. Thank you to whoever got started already. That's awesome. A wonder wall is a great idea. Love the idea of a TED Talk. That's cool. Love the idea of objects. And even though we're looking tonight at digital provocations, I think ideally in my mind, digital provocations, especially in primary, are great as an addition to those physical objects you're exploring. So if we are looking at something like seeds, can we link that to an online tool with our library e-resources? So how can we bring those pieces together? So posting an image on Linowit, awesome. We actually did that with one of the tools we're going to look at tonight. We did Padlet, a similar tool. So we grabbed an artifact from the Google Arts and Culture gallery, and then we just posted it and asked them to do I see, I think, I wonder. It was really cool just to see what they noticed. Posting a picture on the screen, and that is how simple it is. So hopefully we can give you some new starting points for that. Use iPad icons. Yeah, so Gurpreet, that's a great point. There's so much we can just do with some of the apps and something like maps. We used that in grade 3 when we were looking at living and working in Ontario and just giving them a place that was meaningful from a co-created list, and what could we tell, what could we notice just from that one place and that one image. All right, a problem that needs solving. And as I'm reading through all of your ideas, I'm reminded of a great page in Launch. So Launch is a book written by John Spencer and AJ Giuliani, focused on the design thinking process. And they have a great section of their book in the Launch cycle that's Look, Listen, and Learn. And they had 7 different ways that you can kind of get kids into design thinking. And I think a lot of them would work for inquiry too. And just to your point, giving them something that needs to be fixed is one way. They also talked about those social issues, getting kids into social issues. And the global goals are a great way to do that. All right, awesome. Okay, we're going to go to our next question, if that's okay. And our next question, our last question, is just what are some of the topics you're exploring right now? What are your kids passionate about? What are some of those big ideas in your curriculum that you're exploring? And we'll see if we can kind of make that connection. All right, so I see celebrations and seeds. Monica, I'll have to send you the stuff after we use it with NTIP tomorrow. We're creating a little provocation area. Simple machines, zones of regulation. That's an interesting one. Forces, First Nations, fantastic. Genius hour with grade 5, cool. How do we learn language? Elena, that's a big one there. Liquids, farm animals and weather, changing traditions and celebrations. Yeah, not a small one. It's an interesting one though, Elena, because I've been thinking a lot about it as we've been working with some of our ESL and ELD newcomers. And as a kid, being a second language learner, as I grew up in Europe, yeah, it's interesting to have those feelings and those emotions come back, and how just all the process of language learning. Definitely an interesting feeling. So we have some coding even in there, which is awesome. All right, families and traditions, structures, immigration. Really cool. Habitats and plants, early societies. So this is a good time to say, oh, that's a cool question, Karen. And Alana, yours is even cool, as well. I feel like I'm having my own inquiry here on the side. All right, folks. So thank you so much for that. We're going to try to incorporate your ideas into our explorations tonight as much as I can. I think there's so many options, and that's the hard part about our conversation tonight, is that when we look at those provocations, we're just looking at a handful of starting points, but there's so many other options. So when I look at residential schools and digital provocations, we often go to the Historica minutes. Those 1-minute historical commercials that we see on TV, they're actually all accessible from their website. So even the new one that they published last year around residential schools is accessible and often digestible for our students, right? It's that nice short amount of time so that we can really have a conversation and discussion about it. Okay, so let's dive in. We're going to look at a lot of tools, and as we're looking at all the tools, I really want you to think about what's that one tool that you look at that you say, this is a tool for me. Because there certainly are going to be a lot out there. We're going to spend a lot of time on some of the picture and visual options, but we'll take time at the end of our chat tonight to really just debrief and think of what that one tool is. Because technology sometimes can be overwhelming and there's so many possibilities, but starting small and playing and messing about is where it's all at. Okay, so like we said, when we look at digital provocations, I think when I think of digital provocations, I kind of think in those three areas of images. Sorry, Cheryl, I'll pull that up right now for you. So when we look at just digital provocations, I think one of the ways is images, and that's kind of how I got started with it. A little bit more about even using infographics and math for data management as a way to kind of spark that conversation and that exploration. But there's so many other possibilities as well. Video is one that I'm exploring right now and trying to get a better handle on. But there definitely is a lot more out there with, there you go. Cheryl, hopefully I dropped that in for you. There's definitely a lot more out there that I haven't accessed yet. And with video, I think the hardest part with video is that there's so many places to go to access that information. But one of the other ones that we've been exploring or just starting to explore is the idea of VR and AR. So the idea of virtual reality, and we often think of virtual reality when we see those goggles. And then also augmented reality. So that layer of digital content on top of physical world objects. And it gets really crazy when we think we can start creating these different tools. So let's get started just looking at some image options. So one of my favorite tools, and I'm sorry to the Peel folks that have heard this before, one of my favorite tools of all time is actually the Google Arts and Culture resource. Folks, can you just give me a check mark if you've seen it before and an X if you haven't? Just in those. So just with your little check marks there, so I see, okay. So it looks like a lot of check marks, maybe a few. No. Okay, so cool. It's new for some people. That's awesome. So for those of you that it's new to, just a quick overview before we dive into the actual tool. We'll give you a little web walkthrough. Google's gone into museums worldwide and taken high-definition pictures of their artifacts. And it could be anything from a scarab for early societies to things like walking around Pompeii. So lots of different options and lots of different tools and collections and how they've organized it. So I'm just going to take you for a little web tour to show you some of the ways I've used it and some of the tools that are possible in Google Arts and Culture, and in particular how we can create our own collections to share with students. So let me do that. So I'm going to just do a quick little application sharing. And if you can just give me a happy face if you see my desktop, then I'll know we're all good.
Yep,
Trish, can you see my desktop? Sorry, I can't see the chat window. Awesome. Okay, so this is the Google Arts and Cultural Institute. If you just go to the home page, like we said, they've gone into museums worldwide. So they always have their featured themes and different stories and collections you can explore. So one of my favorite things is just the possibilities we have to, yeah?
Yes, just to remind you that if you scroll, give it a moment for it to catch up for us.
Okay, thanks. So one of the things with Google Arts and Culture is we can really zoom in closely on the artifacts. So that really changes the exploration. So I'm just going to click up here in the corner on the search button, and we are going to look for a resource. So I always go to Van Gogh just the first time, so we can get started. I'm just going to leave it there for a second. So hopefully you guys get to see it. And I'm going to click on Starry Night here. I have the option below to see where the details about the artifact. Really helpful, because the first time we ever did this with early societies, we had kids looking for ancient China, and they actually didn't look at the date, and they were looking at reproductions or things that were inspired by ancient Chinese motifs. So that was definitely a big lesson for us to get them to kind of look at the details about the artifact itself, and it's really what pushed me to collections, which I'll show you later. So we have our picture here. We're just going to click on the blue magnifying glass, and what happens is we get this little option up in the corner to zoom in on our artwork. So I'm going to be able to zoom in to the point that I can see the chunks of paint on the canvas. Now it seems cool here, but I'm just going to search here for scarabs so we can show you. Somebody said they were doing early societies. So this is the one we use with the grade 4s, and I'll just give it a minute to load. But this is a perfect example of those digital artifacts as provocations. So I use my little zoom in button, and now we can get closer to the point that we can read those hieroglyphs. And the questions that kids come up with, they notice the symbols, they notice the animals. They start making predictions and asking questions just from that exploration and doing a simple I see, I think, I wonder. So now, like I was mentioning, part of the hard part is finding ways to get kids to the right artifacts. So one of the things I love about Google Arts and Culture is as I'm perusing, I can click on this little heart in the corner, which adds it to my favorites. Great if you're just trying to find your own collection. But we have a special tool we can use as well. So I'm using my little 3 lines here in the corner, and I'm going to go to my favorites, and I'll just give it a minute so that you can see it. And you can see I have all my favorite items that I've tagged. I'll just give it a second there. And along the top, you're going to see my collections I've put together. So I could take artifacts that I really enjoyed, or artifacts I thought the students would enjoy, and we've put them into one collection that I can now drop into my Google Classroom, or we could use a QR code for, and we can start using them as a provocation for that exploration. I think at first I started with tools like this, ancient Rome, ancient China, but then we started exploring using the tools for other pieces. So a colleague the other day used it as a provocation for Diwali. So she actually found a picture for Diwali to start a conversation with her class. I love it as a provocation, just even as a writing prompt, getting kids to start asking questions. So using even a picture like our friend here, and as we zoom in, what can we notice? What other elements? Folks were mentioning celebrations, lots of different representations of celebrations in Google Arts and Culture. So using that as a provocation or an invitation to that exploration. Some great different representations of Canada. So one of the collections we just went to put together was around that identity, and can we find a variety of pictures that we thought represented different visions of who we are as Canada. So I'm going to pause just a minute before I show you how to do a Google collection, just to see if there's any questions, and I'm coming back. Gurpreet, so I'm coming back to the questions. Chunky paint. That's awesome, Elena. I like the idea of inventive spelling there, Gurpreet, but that is one of the reasons I think creating those collections is key. Even something, so Kaidi's actually joined the group, which is awesome. So her and I were looking at doing digital provocations for math. So we put together a collection just around different Indigenous beading work. And we started with Aboriginal and First Nations beading, and then actually ended up expanding to various cultures because it's a craft that many different cultures embody. Hope you can hear us now, Jennifer. Yeah, so Cheryl, that's the coolest part about Google Arts and Culture, is that it nicely fits into all of our Google tools. I know somebody asked about, can students make collections? They definitely could with their Google accounts. I haven't necessarily done it with any of the K-6 group, but I could see it using it as a curation tool with your intermediates or senior friends. Elena, unfortunately, I haven't been able to find a collaborative tool, but I wonder if you could use Google Keep as a way to get around that, or a Padlet page. We definitely have used Padlet as a way for kids to collect their finds in Google Arts and Culture, and then bring it to a collective. Yeah, so let's just look at maybe if folks are cool with it. Yeah, Flipboard probably would allow for it. That's a great idea, Elena. So if folks are interested, I can show you how to walk through making a collection, and maybe we'll make a collection of some different visuals for celebrations. So we're going to come to some Canadian content in just a minute, because that's a great question, Gurpreet. All right. So if it's okay with folks, I'm just going to share my desktop again, and we'll give you a little walkthrough of how you can make your own collections. Sorry. There we go. Okay. So I'm just going to go through here, and we're going to find one or two pictures around celebrations. putting collections together was, imagine when you have access to the world's museums at your and art galleries at your fingertips. So I ended up starting to put collections together because it just streamlined their whole search. So we didn't really need to teach them the whole website. We could just really wanted to tackle. So here's an interesting portrayal of a birthday. So I'm just going to give it a minute to load. And everything seems to be crashing on us. That's awesome. There we go. So it's part of my collection already, which is great. So over here on the side, like we said, we click on those 3 lines and go to favorites. And all I have to do is click on the create a new collection button, and then it gives me my whole artifacts. So I can then choose the artifacts I want, and just to save us some time, I'm going to pick my beading examples here. So I'm just putting a little check mark in the corner, and then I'm going to the corner up here and saying continue.
Tina?
I give it a name. I can give it a description. And then this one's important because we want that link that we could then drop. Yep. Yes.
I think you are clicking too quickly so that we cannot see the exact steps.
Okay. Here's what I'll do. We'll stop sharing and I'll make a video just to save us time. Is that okay?
That would be great. Thank you.
No problem. So it seems like it's just lagging a little bit. So to save us the time, I'll create a little video and we'll tweet it out, or we'll add it to the collection so that if you do want to make your own collections, you can. Some of you may have figured it out already, but really I think that collection and that curation helps us to put the best collection of resources together to provoke our learners. And I think a lot of times when we see art, we go straight to science and social studies and those history topics. But to me, using a provocation, even like Van Gogh's bedroom as a writing prompt or an exploration. Monica, I think of your doghouse ideas and seeing, could we bring in a piece of art that could get us having that conversation as well. Deanna, I think to your point, in Flipboard, if people tweet or share, you can actually add to a collection. And Alana's going to help you out there. So cool. Just a thumbs up if you liked Google Arts and Culture. Any questions about it before we get on to our next tool? All right. Thanks, Elaine, and Jennifer, and Joyce, and Lindsay. Awesome. I'm glad you love it, Gurpreet. Exactly, Megan. So that's how we started with it. We used it for the early societies. So we used that exact scarab picture you saw, and we said, what do you see? Think and wonder. The other thing we had them do is we had them actually use Sketch. So they took a quick snapshot and they annotated right on the picture so we could see kind of what was sparking their interest and their curiosities. With something like Van Gogh's bedroom, with a grade 1 class, we zoom in and we start trying to be little detectives. So we try to figure out whose bedroom it is. So we take a closer look at the pictures and the clothes, take a look at the different doors and whose bedroom could it be. So we're just using it as a spark that way. Awesome. Now some people brought up the Canadian content piece. And that definitely is something that we always struggle with. So one of the options that's being suggested to me over the years is really, and we're going to skip this because we took too much time, sorry, is looking at FLICKR. So one of the coolest things is that a lot of our archives in Canada not just the Canadian archives, but also the Ontario archives, and even local places. So the Toronto Public Library has their own FLICKR account, and so does PAMA and Peel, so the Peel Arts and Museum. So we're going to put some links into the chat box and give you some resources to explore. And I'll just talk through it, and if you want to drop your questions into the chat box, then we can take it from there. So one of the things when you look at, oh, Trish, that's the next page, I think. I can pull these ones in if you want. One of the things that I find most interesting with the archives is that I find it hard to just go to their FLICKR page. So they actually have an option to go to the albums. So the albums are already around collections. So someone mentioned that they're exploring First Nation topics, doing an inquiry around that. So the Ontario Archives and the Canadian Archives have albums with artifacts that are already curated for you. So it makes it a bit easier to find what you're looking for. For anybody doing intermediate social studies and history, lots of different options there. I love the Ontario archives as well, just because they have different resources. But yesterday I was exploring with the Canadian archives. My parents live in PEI, so it was really cool just to even look at some of the pictures they had of Canadian provinces. And one of the pictures they have from 30, 40 years ago, I could almost pinpoint where it is right now in today's world, I guess you could say. And it made me just think of that use of land that we talk about throughout our social studies topics. That's a great point, Elena. You'd have to look with FLICKR. Each image is posted with its own copyright, but they are web linked. Each image is web linked individually. So you could, just like Google Cultural Institute, take the image and drop it into your Google Classroom, either as a collection or an individual link, using one of those outside tools. So one of the reasons I ended up at the Toronto Public Library was we were looking with a colleague. We actually created a walking tour of Bolton. So we were exploring communities past and present and the impact, and the kids were really getting into the history. One of the local historical society members had come in, and we were trying to help get some primary sources for the kids to explore. So it was really hard to find things for Bolton in particular. And it was weird that we ended up at the Toronto Public Library. But one of the really simple albums that they have, and I think I've connected it and dropped that link into the chat window, is they just have old postcards from Ontario from that time period. So it was a really interesting way of starting our conversation about that journey over time. And definitely an interesting way to dive a little deeper. And I was even more excited when PAMA started adding their artifacts to FLICKR, because when we did the session, Laura and I did the inquiry group, we actually ended up having to sit at PAMA for a whole evening trying to sort through their artifacts and take images, which we had the rights to do. So knowing that they're starting to digitize that collection just means more kids have access to that repertoire. But even looking at something as simple as a C&E, we've done that with another grade 6 class. The Toronto Public Library has this amazing collection of old pictures of the C&E. And being able to put them side by side and say what's different and what's the same. And something like that can bring us to lots of different conversations at different grade levels. So lots of fun there. Any questions about FLICKR? Any ideas? So we can go on to the next idea. Okay, I think we're okay to go on to the next idea. So one other way that we've used images, and this may be pushing it a little bit, is infographics. So Sarah, if you look at the links in the chat box, the first link I posted at 8:06 should take you to the Canadian Archives. It's the bibliophile. But we'll make sure all those links are in the recap that you get. So hopefully that will help you out. So coming back to infographics, this was another aha moment. I had a classroom teacher looking at infographics, and it was kind of interesting. She was looking at data management. It was grade 5. We were trying to think of a really cool way to get kids to start asking questions and to see what they knew about data management already. So I thought it was going to be really cool, and I found this Minecraft graph, and I found an ice cream graph, and I really thought it was going to be awesome. And I found one sports infographic, and it's the first link you see in your chat box that Trish already shared, Michael Jordan versus Kobe Bryant. And realistically, if you look at the data that's represented in that infographic, it's above a grade 5 level. But I've never seen better I think, I wonders than with that infographic. It was crazy. And I made the silly statement that if anybody was interested to come see me and I'd find an infographic that they were interested in. And I ended up standing in line for 20 minutes so that they could continually tell me all their favorite athletes. And it really got me into that thought process of realizing how important it is for kids to be able to tap into their passions and their interests. And that's what I love about the digital provocations. Sometimes we don't have access to all the physical items for them to touch and manipulate, which is fantastic as well. But we can tap into some of those passions that they have with those digital provocations. And then we've been exploring infographics a little bit further. So especially for that social justice lens, one of the ones I love, and it's the second one in that list that Trish posted, is hunger counts. So Food Banks Canada actually creates a little summary every year around food bank stats for all of Canada. The picture you see on the screen is actually just an example of one resource they provide, which just shows you the percentage of food bank use in different provinces, including its increase over time. But they also have lots of different visual representations. One of the pages, and I'm going to use Kaidi and I again, sorry Kaidi, and I always say your name wrong too, so that's even worse, was we looked at a great page that just summarizes the number of people that access a food bank based on their age level. And it's one of those really interesting pages to explore. And it'd be interesting to see how kids respond at different grade levels. So that's a new one for me. The other big aha that I had was that Stats Canada puts infographics out. So all of the Stats Can information each year, they publish probably about 10 to 15 different infographics. I know someone mentioned immigration. So they actually had, I think, 2 or 3 different infographics just on immigration stats. One of the coolest ones, Alana, was around the change in language makeup in different areas. So one was a prediction of immigration stats in the future. Another one looked at the majority languages in different areas, all presented in a really nice visual way. So even our junior kids that sometimes wouldn't access infographics or definitely wouldn't access the raw data that StatsCan has, can access it and have conversations. But there's definitely infographics for all levels and all ages. Karen, I love your point about infographic books for primary students. So many possibilities. We're starting a Pinterest board, so in Peel, we actually just created a iBook, and I'm just dropping the link in there, just focused on engaging students in math, and we have a section of the book focused on text as provocations, and we're exploring just that use of infographics at all levels. So even the quick little ice cream infographic being a starting point. And of course, a lot of these can lead into some great creation options. So just looking at our pictures, we've looked at a lot. We looked at the Google Arts and Culture for accessing some images. We looked at FLICKR, and then we looked at infographics. So And I'm not sure if they have a notification page, so I'm just going to see if I can get the exact link up for you. So I linked to a particular infographic, but this here, hopefully I can pull it up fast enough. This here is, can you hear me now, Alana and Gurpreet? Okay, awesome. I can't look on the internet. I guess that's the thing. So they have their whole collection. I don't know if there's a feed, unfortunately. And I haven't seen a Twitter handle or anything like that. Yeah, I know, that's the hard part. There's so many different infographics out there created in different countries. I really do enjoy the different sports infographics. It's been interesting to see how much kids buy into that. And there's been a lot of sports infographics that have been created with less data sources, I guess you could say. So much more accessible for even our grade 2s and grade 3 friends to look at the numbers. A messy one comes to mind. I think instead of, I haven't seen any infographics that have catered particularly to kindergarten, but the ice cream one, and I don't know if it's on the Pinterest board or not. If not, I'll add it to the Pinterest board. It's a great one to start off with because it's just ice cream scoops on an ice cream cone, and it would be a great way to just have that conversation. I think, especially in the early primary years, we're looking at that representation of data, and really with infographics, it's just that summary of data. So there's also some infographics, we always think of data having to be numbers, and there's some great infographics that don't use numbers at all. So there's story charts, or there's animal groups. So I think some of those visual representations are a great place to start. And for us in Peel, we have access to DK Find Out under your library e-resources, and they have some great visual representations you could start with. Oh, Sarah, that's awesome. Want to drop one in, Sarah? Want to drop a link into the chat box? Oh, Gurpreet, it's, if you want to send me an email, it's under your library e-resources. But it's not one of the main boxes. So it's called DK Find Out. Okay. We'll give one more minute if anybody has a question, and if not, we'll go on to video. Thank you, Sarah. Looking forward to checking that out. That's awesome. So are we all good? Thumbs up if we're good to go on? Love seeing all that sharing. Okay. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Jennifer, and Elke, Elaine, and Samantha. That's awesome. All right, so we want to look at video a little bit and just look at some of the options. So I think we'll go to the Kids Should See This just because we're more of a primary junior crew, and then we'll go to the YouTube 360 because I think it will help, especially for folks that are looking at animal adaptations. But there's lots of different resources in there. So this is one that I find I always struggle with just because there's so many different options for video. And finding that just right video at the just right time is kind of like that match made in heaven kind of moment, right? You stumble upon the right video at the right time. And for me, I have a favorites playlist on YouTube so that whenever I find those clips that I kind of think are awesome, I can just favorite them and go back to them when I need them. A great example is that Historica Minutes just put out an awesome clip of Brown community looking at Kensington Market and showing how the different communities impacted and immigration moves. impacted Kensington Market, but how its purpose stayed true over those years. So fantastic clip, amazing for that. But if you're looking for a place to really find those amazing clips, the Kids Should See This is an awesome resource. So Trish has dropped the link in if you want to take a little look as I describe it. And sorry we can't do the walkthrough, it just seems like it slows down our connection here. So when you look at the Kids Should See This, it's just these folks online that are curating amazing clips for kids. The cool part is that it's curated in different collections, so you can look at collections around space or nature, around science, and different, they have art collections as well. And when you look through the clips, they're all a collection of probably clips from 1 minute to 5 minutes that kids would really be engaged by. So for one that we used in a grade 5 class as they were looking at human body, is we found this really cool clip that looked at what happens to the human body in space. It was from TED Ed, but I don't think I would have ever stumbled upon it until I looked at the Kids Should See This. Coming to Alana's point earlier about how do you keep up to date, the Kids Should See This do have an awesome Twitter account. So it kind of keeps that feed if you're a Twitter person. So it keeps coming or keeps you updated on the freshest and newest items. But lots of, there you go, Alana, that's awesome. But lots of great resources there. I think when we're looking at video as well, I've been challenged sorry about that, Stephanie. I've been challenged to think outside the box a little bit when I look at what video entails. So one of the things that I've really been exploring is starting to explore 360 video. So a lot of times when we think of virtual reality, we always think about having to watch it and sit back and being passive. But our 360 video on an iPad with a lot of our primary friends actually can be accessed and manipulated and interacted with. So Stephanie, just to your point, the Kids Should See This is a website, and it's also a Twitter handle. I don't believe it's an app. So I'm going to drop the 360 video link into the chat box just so you guys can check out some different resources. For my primary friends, I know a lot of you also mentioned exploring animals and animal adaptations. I'd love for you to check out the shark clip. And if you're using it on a computer, you're going to be able to use the arrows in the corner to actually take a whole 360 view. So think about when we're talking about animal adaptations or even animal characteristics in grade 2, think about being underwater with sharks as they swim around you. No text needed, so we really can give more kids that chance to access the conversation and think about which questions come to mind and how that can start or spark those inquiries that we're exploring. Yeah, so Learn 360 definitely is a great starting point. And I know it's ministry licensed, so most of us in Ontario would have access to it. And the videos on Learn 360 are not bad, and there's great provocations. I think the biggest thing I see between the video that I use or that educators are using and things we find on some of the shorter or the more traditional sites is its length. A lot of times kids don't want to sit for 30 minutes. And it's really hard for us to tap into those questions and those provocations if we're waiting 20 minutes to see what they're thinking. So being able to tap into some of these quick videos really allows us to tap in to those questions as they're happening. A lot of them, like the National Geographic 360 videos, have no voice and no narration. So they're great to really just start capturing those questions as they come up. And definitely repeat tapping into their interests. I'm not a big fan of sharks, but every primary boy that I've ever worked with seems to enjoy them. And I shouldn't say that. Every high school kid we show them to seem to enjoy it as well. Elena, that's awesome. Yeah, Paul, the YouTube 360 should be a playlist. So we do have the Vimy Ridge option, the Vimy Ridge example in there. That's a great point. It was an awesome piece last year when CBC did that, and a great link as we look as we move into Remembrance Day, right? Great chance for them to kind of experience this and take a closer look. So it's interesting to see as I created the playlist, I kind of had my go-to. So National Geographic had 360 videos that were really cool. Planet Earth from BBC, and they were kind of cool because they were narrated and they kind of, so one of them was, can you spot the cobra or spot the snake? So it was through that exploration. So Gurpreet, to your point about kindergarten and getting them to explore independently, I could definitely see them doing it with a QR code as a provocation. So getting them to scan the QR code and then get them to the site. You could have them independently exploring some different habitats. I'm glad we found a resource for you, Sarah. That is awesome. Thanks, Trish, for putting the links in there again. Elena, are you using the ones from the New York Times? So for those of you wanting to tap into, I'm just going to write the name of the app. So if you are trying to get into that empathy piece and some of those bigger questions and topics, the New York Times, I typed it wrong, oh my. The New York Times has a VR app, and they've really kind of taken it to a documentary level. And one of the cool ones, and it should be on YouTube too, so Elena, you'll have to let me know if it's the same video that you're checking out. Yeah, it's free, Gurpreet. And they have an awesome one called Displaced, which actually looks at 3 kids that have been displaced by war, one in Syria, one in the Ukraine, and one in Sudan. So really cool, again, not a lot of text, but learning from being in that environment. Oh, cool, Elena. So now we have more. The other one from New York Times that was really cool, and some other resources out there, was one of our schools was looking at doing a long walk to water for the global read aloud currently, and we were able to find some YouTube 360 videos that actually tapped into that as well. So those 360 videos, it actually followed a child as they went to get water in that whole process each day. So that really brings us to that next piece that we were going to explore, which is the virtual reality and the augmented reality. I don't know if folks are game to try it out. I just know it hasn't been fantastic internet connection stability here. How about we just take a vote? I can talk you through it, which would not be as exciting, or I can try to show you my iPad screen. So if you'd like us to try, can you just give us a check mark? And if you rather just have Sue, you're very okay. Sam and Sue are anxious to actually try it out and take a closer look. Okay, this is probably what you should never do in a presentation, completely try to test the limits of the technology. But we'll just give you a second. So I'll talk through what I want to show you, and then hopefully it cooperates, and we will be able to show you what is happening on our screen. So Google Expeditions is something that has only been around, I guess, for probably just under a year. And Google Expeditions takes what we talked about with 360 video to the next level, I guess you could say. So it allows us to literally take kids on a field trip. So we're able to guide them through these virtual worlds and allow them to explore. Now, a lot of times when we see Google expeditions, you see people with their cardboards on and phones, and that's not really accessible to us in primary especially. So just know that Google Expeditions also works from a tablet device, and as the kids move, they'll be able to see that movement. So huge if we're having our grade 1s or our grade 2 friends exploring and engaging that way. Okay, folks, we are going to take a risk and try this out. Trish, just jump in if it completely doesn't work. And fingers crossed it cooperates. Okay, thanks. All right, here we go. Okay, we're going to go into QuickTime Player and share. And if you just want to let me know if you see my movie screen, my iPad screen. Woohoo! Okay, step 1 is done. Awesome. Fantastic. This is awesome. Okay. Fingers crossed this will work. So the Expedition iPads and iOS and Android devices, I don't know why I said iPads and Android and iOS, iOS and possible on laptops just yet, but of course we do have the Google Map Treks, which is kind of what we've used on Chromebooks, as well as the new Google Earth, which if you haven't checked it out, fantastic for doing these kinds of Explore Earth. They even have a new voyage that goes into homes in 20 different countries. So when we're thinking of communities and global communities in grade 2, a fantastic resource. Everyone still with me? Can still see my iPad screen? Maybe? Yes, awesome. Okay, so I'm going to go into Google Expeditions, and we're just going to give you a quick little tour to show you what it looks like. So as we go into Google Expeditions, you're going to see on the left-hand side that I'm currently in as a guide. So as a guide, you do need to log into a Google account. It doesn't need to be a board account. If you do have a Google account with your board, you could use it, but if you don't, that's okay, through personal Gmail as well. Now students would actually go in as explorers, and they just added a new feature that you don't need to be part of a expedition to explore. So we could have students doing some self-exploration, but they would need to sign in. If we do it as a whole class, they don't need that. So I'm going to go back as a guide just so we can see. So when we go in as a guide, I've linked it to just my downloaded expeditions here. So just to show you, up in the corner we have that little search box, and we can search for anything. So it looked like we like sharks. We talked about our friends liking sharks there. So you can see we have a couple different options. This ocean safari looks pretty cool. So I can click on it, tap on it, and it will download it to my device. So you don't even need to be on Wi-Fi for it to work. I find they say that, but I've never done it without Wi-Fi. So I'm just going to switch back to downloaded so that I only see the expeditions I've downloaded. I love that they have Canadian content, so there's a cool one about Canada there. There's also famous buildings. Some friends were talking about animals and animal adaptation, so this one about the rainforest was ideal. Expedition with a grade 6 teacher and hopefully her class soon. So let's see if we can go to that shark one and take a closer look. So in our ocean safari, when we open an expedition, we actually get this 3D world. So we can take a look around. Whoa, check that out. That is awesome. And you may notice that this scene is the humpback whale. So in the corner, we have the humpback whale. Can you still hear me, Gurpreet? Hopefully. When you tap on the humpback whale, you can actually get some script. I found this is always a bit heavy, so you kind of want to read through it and see what you like first. They have some questions, and then they have these options down here to actually highlight with the little target idea, as well as an option of bringing in pictures. So kids can literally pick up their device. Let's pull that down for a second. And as they rotate, and it's not working for me right now, that's okay, they can actually move around and see that world. Now this is just our first scene because again, it is just that first part of our expedition. So then we can go to a next scene. And notice that your kids won't have this scene till you push start. So in an expedition, you really are guiding them through. So there's our great white sharks, and we can take that scene there. And we can point their direction to the shark teachers up on the screen and some of those different facts. Okay, I'm glad you like this. Can we see how this would work with our students? Oh my goodness, check that out. I see a bottom feeder down there. Kind of want to check out more about him. I'm kind of upset that he's hidden. Can you see these working in your classroom? Questions you have about the expeditions? Drop that conversation in. Is that you're going to be able to make your own expeditions? I haven't seen the tools just yet. For some reason tonight it's a little sluggish. Could be my Wi-Fi because we're putting high demands on it. Check that out. He's flying right over us. But traditionally, they just added in a new feature too where you can annotate. So you could draw or label. Think if you're talking about being able to just doodle as those questions and those conversations are coming up is ideal. Yeah, okay, I know a lot of times when people push Google Expeditions, we do see the glasses, and it's part of that cool feature. But I definitely think for virtual reality, the 360 videos online and using the iPad's virtual environments and worlds. Yeah, Monica, huge for the world communities. And if anybody is doing global communities, definitely check out, I'm just going to leave this so I can show you some of the other options there, Monica. Definitely check out Google Earth because some of those voyages are really changing the game. So to me, Google Earth was always cool, kind of had that street view feel, but the new voyages really take you on different explorations. We were looking at one that looked at impact on environment from hurricanes. And then another one, even for the early years, there was one with Sesame Street that took you to different communities and let you learn about them. That's a great question, Elena. I have found that the iPad has made the vision piece a bit more interesting, or a bit more accessible than necessarily the goggles, just because they're so small. I need to explore a little further. I don't know about the mobility issues. So online with 360 video, you have the controllers you could use. But that feels like that would need more mobility than swiping across the screen. So something I'll have to explore for sure. So coming back to Monica's question, if that's okay. Monica, definitely lots of different ideas. So even if we were looking at early societies again, we can go in and look at famous landmarks. They had some different Roman structures. But when you go to search, and I'm just going to switch over here so you can see the live view. It was interesting because we were just talking even about indigenous dance. And I was interested, and of course it's not Canadian, so that's where I was still a little bummed. But it was interesting to see that the different communities had entered those expeditions. Cultural groups, but it will be interesting to see kind of where it goes next as more people get access to make expeditions. I'd love to see some more Canadian content. But yeah, even right now, some of their features are super into baseball. Can we tap into that? So coming to Monica's point, I am going to drop in 2 other tools, especially for those of you using Chromebooks. So Elke, the 7-year-old is more because of the Google Cardboard option. They shouldn't be using Google Cardboard and moving while they turn. I've used it with kids under 7. As long as they're sitting down and using an iPad, I wouldn't, they can't use the goggles, if that makes sense. So just for the folks that were looking for some of those other options, link to the voyages, and we'll also put in Google Map Tracks, give you a chance to check that out, and we'll see if there's any questions before we look at just chat about AR. Thanks, guys. I'm so happy this worked. It was so much more fun than just talking about it. Okay, let me switch this off, and then we'll share those links for you guys. So hopefully you see the whiteboard now, and now, okay. I'm just going to try to quickly get so Monica, here's Google Earth. I think this is home. Let me know if that's the right link. And the other one that folks may enjoy is the Google Map Tracks. So similar to Google Expeditions, a bit more self-explanatory for the kids. And if you're worried about that movement and that age level requirement, you can go walk with the polar bears up in Winston Churchill. I always say Winston Churchill. The picture book stuck in my head. The other one we've used a lot is walking around the Taj Mahal, which has been great even just as a provocation for shapes and geometry. So we'll give you a minute to explore those. Drop your All right, since it's taking a lot of time to load the page, we can look at the next tool and do our wrap-up because we want to take some time to reflect on what our takeaway is going to be from tonight, and then we'll take it from there, if that's okay. So one other tool that maybe would be of interest to you is looking at augmented reality. I find this one a hard one just because there's so many apps and it's hard to find that just right tool. So we've been using it a lot for space. So NASA has this great spacecraft 3D app that when we hold the app over the paper, it pops up this digital artifact. So it's a really cool kind of aha moment. So, sorry. Oh, Jan, I'll come back to that in a second. Sorry, Jan. So definitely something to explore if you're looking to push yourself. But I think we've talked about so many tools tonight that I would leave this as your last exploration on the list. So Jan, great comment. We've struggled with that in Peel. Are you in Peel? Hopefully it's fixed by now. So something happened with Google Earth and now they need your Google accounts to be approved or checked off. So you just need to contact your district and see if they're willing to do that with the new version of Google Earth. I'm not quite sure why they did that. Google made the change, not your school district. So it's just a bit of a bummer. One of the things I did, I was able to trick the system and go into incognito mode where it didn't see my account and get in. So that's one workaround. Or if you wanted to do it as a class exploration, it does work with your personal Gmail accounts as well. But if you send me an email, I can make a little video of that workaround for you this weekend, so you can check that out. It really is weird why they enabled that, and that's some of the frustration sometimes with technology, right? There's so many possibilities, and then sometimes so many tiny little hiccups. Folks, we've looked at so many tools tonight. Sarah, you're a lucky duck. Are you on your personal? Are you on your personal account? Because that's how I learned it the hard way. I was using it on my personal account and it was amazing, and then went to my board account and it was blocked. Oh, that's awesome. And Peel, the team down in LTSS, helped us out and got us set up. Oh, Elena, for me, I think it's really, there's two things that I'm kind of exploring now. One is really playing with VR and 360 video and seeing how we can use that. And curating that, I guess. How do you make those collections, especially since a lot of the tools aren't web-based links. So when we curate things on Google Arts and Culture, or if I curate a collection from FLICKR, it's a bit easier because they're web-based, but how do you put those collections together for animals when it's VR experiences and they're in so many spots? So that's been something I've been struggling with. I think the other thing that I've been exploring is really the intersection of the digital provocations, the physical objects as provocations, and the text as provocation. And how can we get that great mixture of all three to get kids asking amazing questions? And then the third piece, I guess, is that personalization. How can we get that great group of objects that is the perfect set for that group of kids? Because I think sometimes we think we find that perfect resource and it will work for one group, and then the next time it does nothing for them. So how do we find and fine-tune and get that just right resource that will get that kid asking that just right amazing question that they need at that time? So mostly all around curation. That was a very long answer there, Elena. Okay, so here's your question. We've looked at a lot of tools tonight. We want to think about your practice. So think about a learning goal you have coming up. Maybe it's one coming up, maybe it's one you're working on right now. Think about what you think your kids, oh, sorry, Deanna. Think about what your kids would engage with mostly, and what artifact would you use? Maybe it's one you've seen tonight, maybe it's one you're going to look for, maybe it's one that a group member shared. So awesome to have people suggesting topics, which is awesome, and suggesting resources. So if you just want to chat, put that into the chat box. So we'll take some of those ideas and talk through them. If you have any other questions, we're just going to take a few minutes to take the time to reflect and consolidate our learning together. Alana, that curation tool, and I guess that could be a topic of its own, couldn't it? The curation tool piece has always been a bit of a struggle. I struggled just because I was using TAC for it. Just because it was so quick and easy and visual and embedded things so nicely, and then they shut down about 4 weeks ago. So I lost 200 TACs. I was able to download them as a PDF. So that was a bit of a bummer for me. I'm using Adobe Spark mostly to do those collections, but I don't think it helps with the long-term big picture stuff that sometimes would help teachers. Zita, I'm glad you like the ideas. Oh, Deanna, that's a great idea, using math and art. Because I think there's so many possibilities between patterns and lines and shapes, even fractions. There's some great work on Pinterest that I saw that looked at the fraction, looking at pictures and talking about fractions. They were using it as a way of getting kids to create pictures with fractions, but there's so many pieces of art where you can almost talk about tones and colors and that fraction piece. Julia, I'm glad you liked Google Arts and Culture. Okay, I'm glad we found some different resources for you. And Gurpreet, that's awesome you're going to share the resources with colleagues, because I think that's really where we get those great conversations. You guys were a great example of that tonight. Being able to jump off each other and have that conversation is key. Oh, Laura, sparking with video for the water cycle. So this is, since there's a big group of primary people here tonight, I have to tell you my favorite song video tool, I guess. So when I was a primary teacher and then an early literacy coach, I got hooked on They Might Be Giants. Has anybody heard of them? They're a band from the 80s that now does kids music, and they have some of the best, coolest videos and songs to start conversations. Everybody needs to Google. Becky, you have, that's awesome. Hopefully. I'm not just making that up. But they have the coolest song. It's called Everybody at the Party is a Polygon. It's the Nonagon song. So if you do nothing else tonight, Google They Might Be Giants, Nonagon, if you're a primary teacher. And hopefully you'll enjoy it as much as the kids enjoyed it. Oh, Megan, I love that idea of bringing in some structures and the pictures from Google Arts and Culture. And the 360 videos would be awesome for that, wouldn't they? And I think that collection piece, even if we're trying to get kids to, in the early years, especially full-day kindergarten, if we're trying to get them to think outside the box, right, we're trying to challenge them with those unconventional structures. Even some of the sculpture work would be interesting. There's been some interesting sculptures in Google Arts and Culture that maybe play with stable structures and what makes a stable structure and those design pieces. All right, folks, I know our time is coming to end. I love that you are taking away different resources. I hope that tonight was useful. I'm sorry for the technical glitches. I think that we tried to push the boundaries of the technology or the limits of the technology a little bit. So thanks for your patience and your cooperation. And at any time you want, feel free to connect with me. I'm on almost every social media platform. So the easiest way is probably to email me at my PLSB account or connect with me on Twitter. I love Twitter. But I also have an About Me page that has all the other details and my blog ramblings and all that jazz. It was so awesome learning with each of you. If you have any other questions, let me know.
All right, I'm going to jump right in there, Tina. What a fabulous session, and absolutely we should push all the limits of both Blackboard and our learning at the same time. That was terrific. Thank you, participants.
Maybe a little too much, sorry.
Oh, it was great. Participants were amazing. I know there's quite a few experienced teachers out there, and that was great to see you contributing and sharing. Great networking all around. I have a few more things to tell folks, but so you don't need to log out yet. I'm going to stop the recording before I do that. So here I go, stopping recording.